We're now going to talk about how much personal information you might be revealing on the social sites that you use and forums, and when you fill out forms, and really any time where you're providing information. And we're going to look at using identity strategies to limit your exposure to your adversaries when revealing personal information. Increasingly, it's getting harder and harder to not provide information if you want to function in the modern world. Our children simply won't understand the concept of privacy in the same way that we do. But the clear facts are that the less information about you that is out there, the more security, privacy, and anonymity you can grasp at attempting to attain. The less information out there about you, the better protected against identity theft, phishing attacks, spam, con men, social engineering, hackers, nation-state surveillance, local law enforcement, basically everything. But you have to balance your personal information disclosure with your need for an identity or identities online. Here is a scrolling list of information you should consider before revealing online or consider before giving to companies. The more of this personal information that is out there about you, the more of a complete picture an adversary can have of you. Questions to consider when putting this information online or providing it to companies. Who can ultimately access the information? You might think it's just your friends or just the company, but they can forward the information on. If it's a social site, the social site will have access to it. If it's a company, the company will have access to it. Your adversary then may also have access to it. Who controls and owns the information that you are disclosing? You might find that some of the sites you use own the content you publish. Did you know that? Can the information ever be taken back or taken down that you've disclosed? The answer is probably no, because other sites and services archive the internet. So ultimately, even if it is taken down, it may be archived somewhere else. And as we know, nation states are archiving data as well. Will your associates mind if you share information about them with other people? What information about you are your associates passing on to other people? Do you trust the people and organizations you are connected to? They can forward on information you have posted. Even if you post on a private forum, you should consider the information still public because you no longer have control over that information anymore. Are you relying on a social site or other site as a primary host for your content or information? What happens if that site disappears, if it goes down? Will you lose those precious pictures? Are there photos of you online? Do people tag you in photos even if you don't post pictures yourself? Consider the risks associated with the information you post online. Could an unfortunate post on social media affect your career? Will posting your opinions get you fired? What are the consequences of posting, viewing, or creating the sort of content online that you wish to do freely? Just retweeting or forwarding a message indicates your views on a topic. Are you comfortable that your social media presence creates a profile of you online that can be used by employees and your adversary? Do you want to mix colleagues with friends and family? Are you doing that now? Do you have distinctly private activities that you don't want associated with your real identity? Do you perform activities that law enforcement agencies or nation states have laws against? Will the information you disclose lead to the targeting of your friends and family members by your adversaries? Will your children appreciate you posting photos and information about them when they get older? Does this make them more vulnerable? I recommend this site here, who do a great breakdown of the terms of use and privacy policies of companies that you use. They also have a browser plugin. So if you are interested in the social sites that you're using, so let's, for example, look in Facebook. And here we get a breakdown of what this particular social site has to say in their policies. So the breakdown here, very broad copyright license on your content. This service tracks you on other websites. Facebook automatically shares your data with many other services. Facebook uses your data for many purposes. The Android app can record sound and video from your phone at any time without your consent. And if we click here, we can see more details if we want to see a breakdown. So what I suggest is that if you are using social media websites and you want to know what they're doing with your information, this is a good site to go. Check out the detail for the social sites that you use or other sites and see whether or not, you are happy with what it is that they are potentially doing with your data. You need to determine if these terms are really in line with what you are currently posting online. If they aren't, then you need to consider a different identity strategy. In the section on OPSEC, we discuss identity strategies. So let's revisit them in terms of giving away personal information and how you can use identity strategies to manage the information that you're giving out. So the strategies I'm going to list are in order of preference for limiting the revealing of personal information. So first is the avoidance strategy. This is the best strategy for reducing risk related to giving out personal information. And the avoidance strategy is simply avoiding using certain social media, not posting, not filling in forms, simply not registering, just not giving out that information. This is often unrealistic and deprives you from the advantages of the internet and modern living, and just may simply not be possible in some circumstances. But a common example might be not having social media accounts and limiting your accounts to the bare minimum. This way you release the least personal information. It is recommended to use the avoidance strategy where possible. The less information that is out there, the less vulnerable you are. Where avoidance isn't possible, you can use compartmentalization. This is having contextually separate identities from each other and your real identity. For example, you could maintain a social media account under an alias. So you could have a Facebook as John Smith or whatever name, and you might reveal information about you, but it's separate from your real identity. So if your adversary or a HR department do a search on you, there is nothing linked to your real identity. I have a number of friends who, both in the real world and online, are known only by an alias. It's an effective strategy for them to separate their social and professional identities. Next is the content strategy, where you're only giving out carefully considered information against your real identity. This is effective if you manage to always put out carefully considered information, but this strategy is risky as you could inadvertently reveal information you didn't intend to release. A simple example could be you download an app, you register under that app as your real identity, and not realize the default settings are revealing your location or some other personal information. Then you have the audience strategy, which is a step a little bit more risky. This is keeping, as an example, your personal and professional networks separate by using Facebook for friends and family and LinkedIn for your personal network. This can limit the exposure of your personal information, but it is still out there. Do you own that information? Can you remove it? Will someone copy it? Will your adversary be able to find it? Do you trust your audience with that information? Ultimately, if you have put personal information out to an audience, it can be passed on to another audience or viewed potentially by another audience. This is where you get into your privacy settings on those sites. You configure your privacy settings to attempt to reduce the audience. But obviously, if one person can view it, one person can pass it on. And then the most risky strategy is the open strategy. This is using your real identity and being transparent and authentic. Some people do live their lives like this and in the public eye. This is suitable for certain situations and cultures, but this is obviously risky and makes you vulnerable. Even though you're using an open strategy, you should still restrict the personal information you give out. And generally, an open strategy is not going to be suitable for someone who is interested in privacy and anonymity and security. And the final strategy is the custom strategy, which is probably the best general strategy for most people that will allow you to exist on the internet and limit information disclosure by using a combination of the strategies that we've gone through: avoidance, audience, content, compartmentalization. When information is custom to the audience, there is less risk. When identity is custom to the content, there is less risk. Whichever strategy you choose, you should post only the amount of personal information as is necessary. Even if you don't care about privacy or anonymity, you are better protected against identity theft, phishing attacks, spam, con men, social engineering, hackers, etc., etc., if you limit the amount of personal information you give away. Another good site that provides information on how different companies protect you from government requests is this one here, Who Has Your Back, another site from the EFF. And if you check this out here, you've got follows industry accepted best practices, tells users about government data demands, discloses policies on data retention, discloses government content removal requests, pro-user public policy, opposes backdoors. And you can have a look through here and see what it says about the social site that you may happen to be using. So here we can see Facebook, and it doesn't have a star here for disclosing government content removal requests. So check that out. In the section on passwords and authentication, we discuss two-factor authentication. Enable this on any social sites that you use where you disclose personal information wherever possible. So see the sections on passwords and authentication for more details on that. Some social sites will allow two-factor authentication, others may not, but we detail that in that section. Depending on what social sites you use, they will potentially have privacy settings, so you should investigate the best options for you based on your identity strategy. Here is a good guide, one of the best guides I've found on Facebook privacy settings. Facebook obviously is one of the most popular social media sites. Another good read here is on Twitter's privacy settings. If you're using Twitter, I suggest you investigate the privacy settings on whatever social sites and forums and things that you use and visit and make them in line with your identity strategy. Another consideration is you can use decentralized social networks where you control the content and where they are happy for you to not use your real identity and do not own your data. Here are 3 decentralized social networks that I recommend. The first one is this one, Diaspora. The second one is this one, Friendica. And the third one is GNU's social network. So check those out as alternatives. Some of these integrate with existing social media sites while you attempt to migrate away from those centralized sites to these decentralized sites. So you can slowly move away and bring your friends to these more privacy-focused decentralized social networks.